Hi, this is CampusPulse Access. We're basically just a website that helps keep track of various accessible devices on campus. The main aspect of the project is our main website, access.campuspulse.app. That's our sort of catalog. And so this is kind of a core piece. And so we have two main other pages. We have report.campuspulse.app. So this is kind of just a dinky little web page that is essentially our clone of the FMS reporting form, except way simpler and way only limited. It's basically just these. And so there's kind of two buttons, door button, elevator. You can kind of choose what to report. They both basically lead to variants of the same form, um, where you can kind of enter in something that's broken. I'm gonna do a door button because that won't ping. You'll see why in a sec. But say we found a door that was broken, right? I can just you put my name, email. I'm gonna set this to the Welcome Center, which is that little concrete shack, um, sort of near the roundabout, near the Sentinel. It's sort of used for guests to get parking passes, I think. It has no door buttons or elevators to my knowledge, so it's a fun test. Um, I mean, realistically, when you fill this out, you'd enter real values. I'm just gonna put dumb stuff and then make sure that it's clear that this is a test. So I hit submit. And so what that does is that form gets submitted to my diagram. So we came on report, we saw the reporting form. That form gets submitted to this sort of behind the scenes piece of code. And I'm sure half of your Discord just gave you a notification right now because that piece of code is responsible for kind of accepting that form input. It dumps it into somewhere called Airtable. I'll show you that in a second. And it also kicks off Discord notifications. Um, so that will go to our server, and then if it's an elevator, it will also go to the Disability Culture Club server. Um, and just saying, hey, something was filed, it might be broken, be careful. Right? And so what is Airtable? Thanks, Firefox. You're going to reload the whole page. So Airtable is essentially it's basically Google Sheets, just different. Um, it's effectively Google Sheets, except I can use code like I just explained to dump stuff into it. So this is essentially kind of our sort of catalog of things that have been reported, right? This is very much part of the not ideal part of our system. We shouldn't really have to be duplicating like an FMS process like this, but um, we just sort of are because it was faster and easier. Um, but then you can see that we've got the this is a test door button that got reported. And then when it hits Airtable, it will also send an email to the core team. So that's me, Daniel, and Maria, I believe, right now. Um, and sort of this is where it kind of sits and waits for this is sort of the manual part of that process where we as the team will go in and look like just sort of manually check, is this spam? Is this BS, right? Um, and sort of it's up to us to decide like, do we file this to FMS or not? Um, I've also hidden the fields for the name and email just so I don't leak a bunch of people's emails. Um, but yeah, like we've got all the information that you put in that form goes into here. So essentially, our process for reporting that is we go to help.rit.edu. So this is probably if you file a report, you've probably seen this part of it before. But we essentially go to FMS's portal. I think there's even a page. I think I linked it earlier. There's a page on the website that's just sort of a general how do you report something to FMS. Um, so we essentially do that very same thing. Is it gonna log me in automatically? Hey. Um, and so this is essentially just like the basics of how do you navigate FMS. So I usually go students, facilities. For a door button, it would be FMS facilities request. And then one of the more janky parts is so the category I believe you do for a door button, it's structural building maintenance, which doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense. But then if you select that, the subcategory will have the first option be automated accessible door operator, which is a long way to say door button. And then you can fill in kind of the rest of it. Obviously, you'll have the building, the floor, stuff like this. So this kind of form, like it's pretty long. It's got a bunch of stuff that shouldn't really be necessary, but kind of is. Like this phone number and contact method, I've never had like RIT ever use it. I'm pretty sure they just put it in here because these forms are reused for other things too, like housing. And so if FMS needs to call someone to get access to their room, they have a contact method. No idea why the fields are required on the door, but on like the general facilities request form, or why the door button thing isn't a separate form. I've brought that up. I don't think that's gone much of anywhere. Another confusing part is like, how do you get the room number, right? Like for like with the door buttons, they may not always, usually they're not always sort of in a room in the sense that you can just look on, like some of the bathrooms have one right outside and you can look at the room number of the bathroom. But in the vast majority of cases, it's like a vestibule or it's something else like that. And oftentimes whoever reported it doesn't know the room number. So they have to basically, like, it's either them or us has to go look it up. So you fill out the room number. Location details and description is usually something I kind of piece together from sort of what gets submitted in the form. So like obviously if you know the location, like if you can describe the location, you can say that. Giving the room number is usually sufficient though, I think. And and then there's also a template email, a little bit of a template in the email that Airtable kicks out that's basically like, hey, we're submitting, like we got a report from Campus Pulse and we're submitting this on behalf of someone else. Like, here's what they said, here's any additional comments we have, right? So it's just very clear to FMS like where this report's coming from, whatever, and we link to our site in case they want to check it out. So there's that. So that's kind of getting you to submit. I'm not going to submit this because it's not a real report. Let's see if I have any tickets open right now. Because so after you submit, you'll get an email. Oh, hey, look, here's one. So I don't know what happened with this. I opened this 7 months ago. Don't know why it says rerouted and nothing's happened. But essentially, when you open a ticket, you'll get an email with a number that's like WOT. I think when you first open it, like it'll direct you to a page that says WO. I don't know how the system works or why there's two numbers, but the one that you want is usually the one with T. Like make sure that you come back to the Airtable, fill in that it got processed, put the ID number, stuff like that. A lot of that we're hoping to kind of automate more. But one of the main things to do is go to this watch list tab. I was doing some experimenting with this one, but essentially what you'll want to do is make sure that this special email address, tickets@campuspulse.app, ignore everything after the plus. That was me messing around. You'll want to add that email address to the watch list because what that does is it sort of adds more people who are going to get an email when stuff is updated with this ticket. And that email goes, that's sort of, if we go back to the diagram. So we're kind of going along this bottom here. So we reported it. It went to Airtable. We basically just filed an FMS ticket, and now we're adding in our system's email address. So this email address is set up with a web hosting provider that offers a service for email forwarding. And the reason we went with this hosting provider specifically they literally only do this one thing for us. And I think it's the most expensive part of, it's not expensive. It's like $10 a year, $20 a year, something like that. But it's basically they do email forwarding, but they can email forward to a URL. So sort of like how that report on the front end when we reported it and it went into Airtable, like that was a form getting sent to sort of effectively a URL for that little piece of code that does that. It's sort of the same thing. Any emails that come in to that email address will get essentially forwarded to a specific page on the button directory. And that page is designed to process that email, and it's going to extract, like usually the ticket number is in the subject line. and it'll say, hey, like it'll oftentimes the subject line will also be like, hey, this ticket's been closed, or comments have been added, or like it's on hold or whatever, right? So we'll kind of extract some of those key things. And maybe if there's a comment, and that'll get added to the database in the button directory, and so it'll update the status automatically, right? So once our system knows about the ticket, it will kind of automatically do that. The whole once our system knows about the ticket thing is the janky part, because currently it's a little bit still work in progress. But essentially, yeah, that's kind of sort of our janky way of interacting with FMS and their ticket processing system. One of my hopes for the future with this is to basically be able to throw almost all of that away except for the email part, and allow it to basically allow us to direct people directly to FMS ticket form and just pre-fill most of the fields for them, right? Because especially like obviously if you just go to report.campuspulse.app, you kind of have to enter most of it yourself. But one of the neat things about how we design this is that if you're already on the button directory, so if I just pick a random elevator here, there's some extra stuff here because I'm logged in and I just deployed admin mode, but I can click this report issue button, which this report issue button is there regardless of if you're logged in or not. And that will direct you straight to the broken elevator form because we just clicked on an elevator, and it will have pre-filled the room number. So we hope to be able to essentially do that, but instead of directing to our own form, direct to FMS's form. That, as you imagine, requires coordination from RIT, so we have not gotten there yet, but that's something we hope to do, and that's going to help massively simplify a lot of this.